January 18, 1991. Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. The Patriot battery radar operator watched his screen as the AN/MPQ-53 phased array radar detected an object 150 kilometers away, climbing at 4,000 feet per second. The radar's computer calculated trajectory in less than 3 seconds. Ballistic missile, inbound, impact in 90 seconds at Dhahran port facilities, where 15,000 coalition personnel were stationed. The battery commander gave the order. Launch. A PASI-2 missile roared from its launcher, accelerating to Mach 5 as the ground radar transmitted continuous guidance updates. At 50,000 feet altitude, the missile's proximity fuse detonated its 200-pound warhead within lethal radius of the incoming Scud. Shrapnel shredded the ballistic missile's fuel tanks and warhead casing. Flaming debris rained into the Persian Gulf instead of exploding among coalition forces. This was the first ballistic missile ever shot down in combat. Saddam Hussein's strategic weapon, the Soviet-designed Scud that was supposed to terrorize cities and fracture the coalition, had been destroyed by American technology that Iraqi military planners didn't believe existed. Over the next 38 days, this pattern would repeat 45 more times. Iraq entered the Gulf War with 52 modified Scud ballistic missiles, designated Al-Hussein variants by Iraqi engineers. These Soviet-designed weapons, stretched and modified to achieve 400-mile range instead of the original 190 miles, represented Saddam's strategic deterrent. The plan was elegant: strike Israeli cities with chemical or conventional warheads, kill Israeli civilians, force Israel to retaliate against Iraq, and thereby shatter the coalition that included Arab nations who couldn't politically support Israel. Even without chemical weapons, Scuds could terrorize populations, create mass casualties, and demonstrate that coalition air superiority meant nothing against ballistic missiles launched from mobile launchers hidden across western Iraq. Soviet Scud missiles had proven themselves undefeatable in previous conflicts. During the Soviet-Afghan War, Afghan resistance forces had no counter to Scud strikes on Mujahideen positions. In Yemen's civil war, Scuds launched by pro-Soviet forces struck targets with impunity. Iraqi military intelligence had studied these conflicts and concluded that ballistic missiles represented an asymmetric advantage against technologically superior opponents. You couldn't shoot down a Scud traveling at Mach 5 in its terminal phase. The target had perhaps 30 seconds warning between radar detection and impact, nowhere near enough time for evacuation or interception. Iraqi commanders knew the Americans had deployed Patriot air defense batteries to Saudi Arabia and Israel. Intelligence reports identified these as surface-to-air missile systems designed to shoot down aircraft. Saddam's military planners dismissed Patriots as irrelevant to ballistic missile attacks. A SAM system optimized for shooting down subsonic aircraft at 30,000 feet couldn't engage hypersonic ballistic missiles descending from 100,000 feet at 5 times the speed of sound. Soviet missile doctrine, developed over 30 years of research, held that ballistic missile defense required specialized systems with enormous radars and interceptor missiles specifically designed for the mission. America's Patriots were just another SAM battery, effective against aircraft but useless against Scuds. What Iraqi intelligence didn't know was that American engineers had spent 3 years urgently modifying the Patriot system to engage tactical ballistic missiles. The original MIM-104 Patriot, deployed in 1981, was indeed designed primarily for aircraft. But after intelligence assessments in 1987 indicated that Soviet clients, including Iraq, had acquired substantial ballistic missile arsenals, the US Army initiated a crash program to upgrade Patriot capabilities. The result was PAC-2, Patriot Advanced Capability 2, specifically optimized to intercept theater ballistic missiles like the Scud. The PAC-2 missile was 17 feet long and weighed 2,200 pounds, including its 200-pound high-explosive fragmentation warhead. Solid rocket motors accelerated the missile to speeds exceeding Mach 5, allowing it to climb rapidly toward incoming ballistic missiles. But speed alone wasn't enough. The revolutionary element was the guidance system. Unlike older SAM systems that relied on the missile's onboard seeker to track targets, Patriot used track-via-missile guidance. The ground-based AN/MPQ-53 phased array radar tracked both the target and the Patriot missile simultaneously, transmitting constant course corrections via an uplink. This meant the missile didn't need to see the target, it simply flew where the ground radar commanded. With the radar's powerful transmitter and sophisticated computer providing targeting accuracy, the missile's smaller onboard systems couldn't match. The AN/MPQ-53 radar represented the technological breakthrough that made Patriot's anti-missile capability possible. Unlike older mechanically steered radar dishes that could track only one or two targets at a time, the phased array consisted of 5,000 individual radar elements that could be electronically steered in microseconds. The system could track 100 targets simultaneously while guiding multiple interceptor missiles. When a Scud launched from western Iraq, the radar detected the massive thermal signature within seconds, calculated the trajectory, determined the optimal intercept point, and prepared a fire solution, all before Iraqi crews had even confirmed successful launch. The engagement cycle, from initial detection to intercept, averaged 17 seconds. The radar would detect the Scud's rocket motor during boost phase at ranges exceeding 150 kilometers. Computers calculated the ballistic arc and predicted the impact point. If the impact point threatened defended assets, the battery commander received an automated alert. Human authorization to engage took perhaps 5 seconds. The missile left the launcher 3 seconds after the fire command. Guided by continuous radar updates, the PASI-2 intercepted the Scud typically at altitudes between 20,000 and 60,000 feet, well before the ballistic missile reached its terminal phase. The first combat intercept on January 18th proved the concept worked, but Iraqi commanders initially dismissed it as luck. One Scud intercepted meant nothing. The Americans couldn't maintain this performance under sustained attack. Saddam ordered intensified Scud launches against both Saudi Arabia and Israel, believing that sheer volume of attacks would overwhelm Patriot defenses and achieve the strategic goal of Israeli retaliation. On January 22nd, Iraqi forces launched a Scud aimed at Tel Aviv. The missile, fired from a mobile launcher in western Iraq, climbed to 100,000 feet altitude before beginning its descent toward Israel's most populous city. Israeli Patriot batteries, deployed with American technical support, tracked the incoming missile from launch. 2 Patriots engaged sequentially. The first missile detonated close enough to shred the Scud's guidance system and fuel tanks. The second struck the tumbling wreckage, ensuring complete destruction. Debris fell into the Mediterranean Sea, miles from populated areas. This intercept had profound strategic implications. Israeli defense forces had prepared retaliatory strikes against Iraq. F-15 and F-16 fighter bombers were fueled and armed, ready to launch attacks that would force Iraq to choose between fighting the coalition or defending against Israeli strikes. But with Patriot demonstrating ability to defend Israeli cities, Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir agreed to restraint. The coalition remained intact. Saddam's strategic gambit had failed. Throughout late January and February 1991, the pattern continued. Iraqi mobile launchers fired Scuds from concealed positions in western Iraq. American and coalition aircraft hunted the launchers, forcing Iraqi crews to fire quickly and relocate. This rush degraded accuracy. The modified Al-Hussein Scuds were already less accurate than original Soviet models due to structural weakening from range modifications. Many Scuds that weren't intercepted by Patriots missed their targets entirely, impacting in empty desert or open water. The Patriot batteries maintained alert status 24 hours daily. Crews worked in rotating shifts, with radar operators watching screens for the distinctive signature of ballistic missile launches. The psychological pressure was intense. A single failed intercept could result in mass casualties. On February 25th, that failure occurred. A Scud struck a temporary barracks in Dhahran housing American Army reservists from Pennsylvania. The impact killed 28 soldiers and wounded 99 others. Post-war investigation revealed that a software error in the Patriots tracking system had allowed this Scud to penetrate defenses. But even this tragic failure couldn't obscure the larger pattern. Iraqi forces fired 158 Scuds during Desert Storm. Patriots achieved 45 confirmed successful intercepts, nearly 1 in 3 Scuds destroyed before reaching targets. Additional intercepts were probable, but couldn't be confirmed due to lack of recovered debris. More importantly, the psychological impact of Patriot defenses was enormous. Coalition forces in Saudi Arabia and Israeli civilians knew that American technology provided protection against Iraq's most feared weapon. Saddam's strategy of using terror to break the coalition had been neutralized. Iraqi military communications intercepted after the war revealed profound frustration. Field commanders reported to Baghdad that Scud attacks were achieving nothing. Missiles were being shot down or missing targets. Casualties were minimal. The strategic objective of forcing Israeli intervention had completely failed. One intercepted communication included the bitter assessment: the Scuds were supposed to win this war. Instead, they are fireworks for American target practice. The technological disparity reflected a 15-year gap in radar and computer development. Soviet Scud technology dated from the 1970s, based on German V-2 rocket principles from the 1940s. The missiles followed predictable ballistic trajectories with no maneuvering capability. Once launched, the Scud's path was determined by physics and mathematics. Iraqi controllers couldn't alter course or evade interceptors. This made interception theoretically possible if you had radar powerful enough to track the missile and computers fast enough to calculate the intercept geometry. The Patriot system represented 1980s American electronics applied to the missile defense problem. Phased array radar that could track 100 targets simultaneously. Digital computers processing millions of calculations per second. Data links transmitting guidance updates at microsecond intervals. Proximity fuses sophisticated enough to detonate at the optimal moment to maximize kill probability. Every element of the system benefited from American advances in microelectronics, software engineering, and materials science that Soviet technology couldn't match. Iraqi modifications to the Scud missiles actually made interception easier. Stretching the missile body to increase fuel capacity and extend range from 190 to 400 miles weakened structural integrity. During re-entry, many modified Scuds broke apart from aerodynamic stress, creating multiple targets that confused older air defense systems, but which Patriot's sophisticated radar could discriminate and track individually. The warheads, separated from their rocket bodies, followed slightly different trajectories, but Patriots simply engaged each piece separately. Soviet missile doctrine had never seriously considered ballistic missile defense viable. The physics seemed impossible. Hitting a bullet with another bullet while both traveled at hypersonic speeds. Soviet engineers had developed anti-ballistic missile systems for strategic nuclear defense. Massive installations with huge radars and nuclear-tipped interceptors designed to protect Moscow from ICBM attacks. But tactical ballistic missile defense, stopping theater weapons like Scuds with conventional interceptors, was considered impractical. The American achievement with Patriot forced Soviet military planners to reconsider fundamental assumptions about missile warfare. The legacy of Patriot's Gulf War performance extended far beyond the immediate military impact. The system proved that ballistic missile defense, long dismissed as fantasy by skeptics, had become operational reality. 18 nations subsequently purchased Patriot systems for their own defenses, including Germany, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Netherlands, Spain, and Greece. American engineers developed improved versions, PAC-3 with hit-to-kill capability that physically collided with targets instead of using proximity fuses, and PAC-3 MSE with extended range and improved maneuverability. The lessons learned from intercepting Iraqi Scuds directly influenced development of Israel's Iron Dome system, designed to defend against shorter-range rockets and artillery shells. Iron Dome's success rate exceeding 90% validated concepts first proven by Patriot in 1991. Ballistic missile defense had evolved from experimental technology to mature, reliable capability that fundamentally altered strategic calculations about missile warfare. For Iraq, the Patriot's success represented the complete failure of a strategic gambit. Saddam had believed Soviet-designed Scud missiles gave him asymmetric leverage against the coalition's conventional superiority. Launch enough Scuds, kill enough civilians, create enough terror, and the political coalition would fracture. Instead, American technology neutralized his most feared weapon. The Scuds that weren't shot down mostly missed their targets due to poor accuracy. The few that hit caused casualties, but couldn't achieve the strategic objectives. Israel stayed out of the war. The coalition remained unified. Coalition forces continued their methodical destruction of Iraqi military capabilities without distraction. The psychological impact on Iraqi forces was devastating. They had watched American air power destroy their air force, shred their command and control, and obliterate their armored forces with precision-guided munitions. Now even their ballistic missiles, weapons that should have been unstoppable, were being casually swatted from the sky by American interceptors. The technological superiority wasn't just incremental, it was absolute. Every Iraqi weapon system faced American counters that rendered them obsolete. In the skies above Dhahran and Riyadh and Tel Aviv, Patriot missiles climbing at Mach 5 had demonstrated a truth that changed missile warfare forever. Ballistic missiles, once considered unstoppable, could be reliably intercepted by nations with sufficient technological capability. The invulnerability that Scuds had enjoyed in Afghanistan and Yemen disappeared when confronted with phased array radar and high-speed interceptors guided by advanced fire control computers. Iraq had planned to terrorize coalition cities with Soviet missiles designed in the 1970s. America defended with technology from the 1990s that made ballistic missiles obsolete. The 45 confirmed intercepts represented more than tactical successes. They marked the end of an era when possessing ballistic missiles guaranteed ability to strike enemy cities with impunity. The age of missile defense had begun, and nations without American technological capabilities would spend decades trying to develop countermeasures to a capability they hadn't believed possible.